Welcome to the deep dive. You know, Usually when you think about a manuscript gathering dust in an attic, you imagine something historical, dry, maybe a bit impenetrable.
Right, like a textbook.
Exactly. But I want you to imagine opening a forgotten package and pulling out a piece of faded red cloth, intricately embroidered with gold thread in the shape of an A.
When you hold it, the texture is so heavy, the history so palpable, it almost feels like it burns your fingers.
It really does. Today, we are looking at a stack of literary analysis notes on Nathaniel Hawthorne's classic 1850 novel, The Scarlet Letter. But I need you to throw out whatever memories you have of a dusty high school lecture.
Yeah, absolutely. We are exploring this as a dark, intense psychological thriller.
We're talking about the suffocating pressure of absolute conformity, the highly corrosive acid of secret guilt, and a rebellious woman who takes a badge of public shame and literally weaponizes it into a source of ultimate power.
It's honestly such a wild ride when you really dig into it.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have to start with how this whole story is framed, because the narrative actually kicks off centuries after the main events, anchored by that physical object.
Yeah, the novel uses a brilliant framing device set in the mid-1800s. The narrator is a man working at a Salem tax collection agency, the Custom House.
Oh, right.
And it's this numbingly bland, bureaucratic environment. But one rainy day, while he's rummaging through an upstairs storage area, he unearths a peculiar package.
And that package contains colonial-era documents and, of course, that beautifully embroidered scarlet letter A.
Finding a physical object grounds the entire story. It is tangible evidence that a secret, scandalous history actually occurred and, left a mark long after the people involved turned to dust.
It's the ultimate narrative hook.
Right.
You are invited to step into a world where a person's biggest moral failure is literally sewn onto their chest for the entire community to monitor.
Which sounds terrifying.
It is. But the brilliant twist of our analysis today is exploring why the person wearing their sin openly is arguably the safest, while the people hiding their flaws behind a mask of perfection are the ones in mortal psychological danger.
That is the core of the whole psychological thriller aspect.
Exactly. To understand those stakes, though, we have to look at the terrifying world our protagonist is forced to navigate. Boston in the 1640s.
Right.
If you're starting a utopian colony from scratch, you'd think the priority would be community survival, maybe a communal dining hall or a hospital. It's incredibly revealing what they choose to build first.
The sources highlight this really powerful opening image. The founders of this so-called utopia immediately construct two things, a cemetery and a prison.
Wow. Priorities, right?
Yeah, and the narrator describes the prison as the black flower of civilized society. It's a metaphor that tells you everything you need to know about the Puritans.
Because a flower requires nourishment to bloom.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this heavy, grim wooden prison only thrives because human sin exists to feed it.
That is so dark.
It is. Now, historically, the Puritans fled persecution in England to practice their religion without interference. They wanted a society where government and religious practice conformed strictly to their interpretation of divine law.
So, in theory, a fresh start. But in practice, they create an environment of hyper-surveillance. It feels like the ultimate nightmarish evolution of modern internet mob justice or a dystopian homeowners association.
That's a great way to put it.
Because instead of getting publicly shamed online or receiving a fine for the wrong color mailbox, the penalty for stepping out of line is physical torture or execution.
Hawthorne was deeply obsessed with the hypocrisy of a community that flees oppression only to build an even more rigid apparatus of control.
Yeah.
And that obsession was deeply personal.
Oh, wait, really? Because of his family history?
Yeah. Nathaniel Hawthorne was a direct descendant of John Hawthorne, who was a Puritan justice of the peace and the lead judge in the infamous Salem witch trials. Yeah, he sentenced numerous innocent people to death. Nathaniel felt the weight of that ancestral blood on his hands so acutely that he altered his own identity. He added a W to his last name just to distance himself from that legacy of self-righteous murder.
Changing your own name is an incredible admission of generational guilt. I mean, he's literally editing his own identity to escape history.
He really is.
And he channels all of that disgust into the setting. The community considers itself holy, but they feed the black flower. Yet right next to that heavy prison door, Hawthorne places a wild rose bush in full bloom.
Which is such a striking visual contrast.
It's almost as if the natural world is offering a completely different framework, one of wildness and forgiveness, to contrast with the rigid iron of human law.
And that tension between wild nature and rigid society brings us directly to Hester Prynne.
Our protagonist.
Yes, The crowd waiting outside the prison is out for blood. The community matrons are openly arguing she deserves a harsher sentence, perhaps execution, for the crime of adultery.
Just for adultery.
Right. But when the prison door opens, Hester doesn't cower. She is holding her 3-month-old infant, Pearl. When the town beadle, the prison guard, puts a hand on her shoulder to march her out, she shrugs him off with complete disdain.
She steps into the open air under her own power. The text describes her natural dignity and force of character. She completely disrupts the visual palette of the town.
How so?
Well, they're all wearing drab, gray, sad-colored garments, and she radiates this proud, dark-haired beauty. But we have to address the elephant in the room, or rather, the letter on the dress.
Oh, yes, the Scarlet Letter.
She is forced onto the scaffold, the town's public platform for shaming, wearing a bright red A for adultery. But I want to push back on her strategy here.
Okay, lay it on me.
If the town forces you to wear a symbol of supreme disgrace, like why on earth would you embroider it with elaborate, gorgeous gold thread? She elevates it to high-end couture. Isn't that just painting a larger target on her own back?
It is an incredibly dangerous move, but it is the absolute brilliance of Hester's rebellion. By embroidering that letter with such gorgeous luxuriance, she uses art and beauty to fundamentally alter the nature of the punishment. The sources point out that her design violates the colony's strict sumptuary laws.
Sumptuary laws?
Yeah, these were actual historical statutes that forbade luxury, boldness, or excessive ornamentation in clothing.
Oh, wow. I had no idea.
Yeah. So by making the letter beautiful, she takes a badge meant to enforce conformity and shame and transforms it into a flagrant transgression.
So she takes ownership of the narrative. If they're going to force her into a box, she's going to decorate the box so brightly it blinds them.
Precisely. She refuses to let the community dictate her internal worth.
And she has a co-conspirator in this rebellion, her daughter Pearl. The text calls this child the living hieroglyphic of the secret affair. She is the physical consequence of the rule-breaking.
Pearl is a fascinating psychological element. She acts nothing like a repressed, fearful Puritan child.
Not at all.
There is a pivotal scene where the town leaders, including the governor and local ministers, interrogate Hester to determine if she is morally fit to raise the child. A minister asks little Pearl, who is barely 3 years old, who made her.
They're testing her.
Exactly. He is prompting her for the standard, rote Puritan answer, "God made me."
But Pearl completely shatters their expectations. She refuses to give them their religious catchphrase. Instead, she claims she wasn't met at all, but was plucked from the wild rosebush growing by the prison door.
It's so defiant.
She rejects their entire theological framework and aligns herself entirely with untamed nature.
What's fascinating here is how Hawthorne establishes a strict philosophical binary. On one side, you have the judgmental, unyielding, and ultimately artificial Puritan society.
And on the other?
On the other, the wild, forgiving, and beautiful natural world. Hester and Pearl represent that natural world, literally living on the outskirts of town on the edge of the wild forest. Their lives are transparent.
Because Hester's sin is worn on the outside, she is ironically freed from the terror of discovery. Everyone already knows the worst thing about her.
Right, there's no more secret.
But that creates a massive psychological contrast with the men involved in this scandal, who are trapped in prisons of their own making. What happens when a human being tries to bury a truth that contradicts their entire public existence?
This is where the narrative shifts into a gripping psychological thriller. We have to look at Arthur Dimmesdale, the beloved, highly respected town reverend.
Who is hiding a massive secret?
He is Pearl's secret father. But he is entirely paralyzed by his own pristine public image and his fear of his congregation. He lacks the courage to stand on that scaffold with Hester, leaving her up there to face the mob alone.
And observing that exact scene from the crowd is the third point of this triangle, Hester's long-lost husband.
Roger Chillingworth. He is an older, somewhat deformed scholar who sent Hester to America ahead of him, only to be delayed and presumed lost at sea or captured by Native Americans.
Talk about bad timing. Seriously. He arrives in Boston on the exact day his wife is being publicly shamed for holding another man's baby. Their eyes lock across the crowd. He slowly raises his finger to his lips, commanding her silence.
He goes entirely undercover.
Yeah.
He adopts the persona of a physician, which in that era was literally called a leech, and makes it his singular obsessive mission to discover the father's identity and slowly drain his life away.
It's so sinister.
He visits Hester in her prison cell and extracts a terrifying oath that she will never reveal his true identity. Here's where it gets really interesting.
No, I know where you're going with this.
Dimsdale is suffering immense, crushing guilt, but the sources highlight an incredible irony. His sermons actually become far more powerful and resonant the more hypocritical his life becomes.
Yes, his internal agony makes him deeply, profoundly empathetic to human frailty.
And his congregation begins to view him as a living saint. So let me ask you to play devil's advocate for a second. Isn't Dimsdale's silence technically serving the greater good?
How do you mean? If he confesses, he shatters the spiritual foundation of his entire flock. Does he really owe a society built on harsh judgment his private truth?
Dimsdale uses that exact rationalization to justify his cowardice. He convinces himself that his public utility, his ability to save souls, outweighs his private deception.
But the novel doesn't let him off the hook, does it?
Not at all. The novel meticulously dismantles that argument by showing the biological and psychological mechanism of his decline. The repression of reality behind a mask of perfection fundamentally destroys the nervous system.
The cognitive dissonance just breaks him.
Exactly. The brain cannot sustain the cognitive dissonance of being worshipped for a purity, is a lie. Dimsdale's guilt manifests somatically. He secretly starves himself, suffers endless insomniac vigils, and physically whips himself in his closet.
His mind is constantly in a hypervigilant threat state, terrified of being exposed, and it literally rots his physical body. It's a chilling parallel to modern life, where people curate these flawless, untouchable personas on social media.
Oh, for sure.
All while battling intense anxiety behind the screen because they know the image is entirely fabricated.
The maintenance of the illusion requires a fatal amount of energy.
Yeah.
And we see a parallel destruction in Chillingworth.
Oh, the husband.
Yes. By dedicating his entire existence to covert revenge, his psychology morphs into something monstrous. He changes from a quiet, intellectual scholar into someone the townspeople begin to suspect is an agent of the demonic.
Like an actual demon.
Basically.
Yeah.
His physical deformity becomes more pronounced. His face darkens with an evil cast. He becomes an archfiend. He's consumed by his own parasitic attachment to Dimsdale.
The novel makes it incredibly clear that the true sinners aren't the two people who gave into a moment of human passion.
No.
The true sinners are the hypocrite who lies to maintain his social capital and the vengeful husband who systematically tortures another human soul.
And the pressure cooker of this society eventually pushes these characters to their breaking points. The town is suffocating them, so they inevitably gravitate toward the only space where Puritan laws hold zero jurisdiction, the dark forest.
The forest serves as this massive pressure valve. The sources note the novel views the occult in the wild woods with surprising sympathy.
It really does.
We hear about characters like Mistress Hibbins, who happens to be the governor's own sister. She's widely known to be a witch who invites people to sign their names in blood and meet the black man in the forest.
And we should clarify, for the Puritans, the black man was a direct euphemism for the devil.
Right.
But Hawthorne heavily implies that this rampant witchcraft is an inevitable byproduct of the society's own intolerance. When a culture demands absolute conformity and criminalizes natural human emotion, those feelings don't just evaporate.
They have to go somewhere.
Exactly. They find an outlet in the shadows. The rigidity of the law literally summons the rebellion in the woods.
It's the only place Hester and Dimsdale can breathe. They arrange a secret meeting under the canopy of the trees, far from the surveillance of the settlement. Hester looks at the broken, frail man Dimsdale has become, and she proposes a radical solution.
What does she suggest?
She tells him they can flee to Europe. They can leave Boston, leave the oppressive theology behind, and reinvent themselves. To prove her point, she physically unpins the scarlet letter from her chest and tosses it into the dry leaves.
It is a breathtaking moment of release. She removes her formal cap, her dark hair cascades down, and for the first time in 7 years, the sunlight actually breaks through the canopy and illuminates her.
Like nature is finally endorsing her.
Yes, the forest itself seems to vibrate in celebration of their reclaimed freedom.
But the reality check comes from a little girl. Pearl has been playing on the other side of a small brook. When Hester calls her over to formally meet Dimsdale, Pearl stops dead at the water's edge. She absolutely refuses to cross.
Don't accept it.
It reminds me of a toddler seeing their parent without their glasses for the very first time. They completely freeze in terror because the fundamental visual anchor of their reality is missing.
That's a perfect analogy.
Pearl points across the brook at Hester's bare chest and throws a massive tantrum until Hester retrieves the letter and pins it back on.
Pearl possesses an intuitive understanding that Hester and Dimsdale are desperately trying to ignore. You cannot simply discard your history in the woods.
You just can't.
The sin, the public shaming, the years of isolated resilience, that is the very foundation of Hester's current identity, and it is Pearl's literal origin story. To throw away the letter is to deny reality. The truth must be integrated into who you are, not compartmentalized and left behind.
You have to own the narrative. You can't just delete it. This overwhelming tension between the public facade and private truth culminates in one of the most surreal, haunting scenes in the entire novel.
The second scaffold scene.
Driven half-mad by his internal fracture, Dimmesdale walks out into the sleeping town in the middle of the night. He mounts the very scaffold where Hester was shamed 7 years prior. By chance, Hester and Pearl are returning from tending to a dying townsperson, and they join him on the platform.
They hold hands, the three of them finally forming a complete family unit, but only under the cowardly cover of darkness.
It's so tragic.
And in that exact moment, a massive meteor streaks across the night sky, illuminating the entire town in a harsh red glare. And the meteor leaves a glowing trail that forms the shape of a giant red letter A.
It's a literal neon sign from the universe, but the interpretation of that sign is completely fractured. Dimmesdale looks up and is terrified, fully believing the universe is branding the sky to mock his secret guilt.
But the townspeople see it differently.
Completely differently. The next morning, the townspeople who witnessed the phenomenon claim the A stood for angel, because the colony's first governor passed away that night and ascended to heaven.
This raises an important question. How much of what we consider objective morality or divine truth is simply human beings projecting their own desires onto reality?
So much of it, probably.
Meaning is entirely subjective. The Puritans are so deeply entrenched in their rigid ideology that they are functionally blind. They see a red A in the sky and confidently declare it means angel.
Talk about confirmation bias.
They listen to Dimmesdale, practically begging to be punished during his sermons, detailing his own corruption. And they interpret it as the highest form of spiritual humility. They lack the psychological framework to process that their idol is profoundly flawed.
Which accelerates us toward the climax. The psychological dam finally breaks. Dimmesdale realizes the European escape plan is a fantasy. He cannot outrun his own conscience. The reckoning has to happen in the exact place the lie was lived.
The climax occurs on Election Day, a massive public holiday that brings everyone to the town center. Dimmesdale delivers the election sermon, widely considered the most transcendent, powerful speech of his life.
It's his masterpiece.
The crowd is moved to absolute rapture. But instead of soaking in the adoration, he descends from the pulpit, walks directly to the scaffold, and calls Hester and Pearl to his side in front of the entire stunned community.
In broad daylight, the ultimate exposure.
And Chillingworth is utterly horrified, because by finally stepping into the light and telling the truth, Dimmesdale is destroying Chillingworth's power over him.
The parasite is losing its host.
Exactly. Dimmesdale confesses his sin, and in a final shocking gesture, he rips open his ministerial garments to reveal his bare chest.
The sources emphasize that the text strongly implies Dimmesdale has developed his own stigmata. Now, stigmata is traditionally a religious phenomenon where a deeply holy person miraculously develops the crucifixion wounds of Christ.
But Hawthorne subverts this entirely.
Completely. Dimmesdale's mark is a scarlet letter, A, carved or burned directly into his flesh. It is the ultimate physical manifestation of his psychological rot. The secret literally ate its way from his soul to his skin. He collapses and dies right there on the platform.
Yet, in his final moments, a crucial transformation occurs with Pearl. Throughout the narrative, Pearl has been an unpredictable, almost supernatural entity, constantly doing battle with the world.
The living hieroglyphic.
Right. But as Dimmesdale lies dying, having finally acknowledged her openly, she leans down and kisses his lips. And the narrator notes that her tears fall on his cheek, serving as a pledge that she will grow up amid human joy and sorrow.
That is so beautiful.
She is humanized. By Dimmesdale accepting reality, he breaks the spell, freeing his daughter from being merely a symbol of his hidden sin.
So what does this all mean? The secret is entirely exposed, the beloved minister is dead, and the town is left reeling. How does the fallout reshape the people left behind?
The psychological aftermath is fascinating, particularly for Chillingworth. The vengeful husband discovers that his entire identity was tethered to the man he was torturing. Without a secret to feed on, his reason for existing evaporates.
He just wastes away.
He withers away and dies within a year. But the complexity of his twisted obsession is revealed in his will. He leaves a massive fortune to little Pearl.
He leaves his wealth to the living embodiment of his wife's betrayal. It's an incredible psychological twist.
It really is.
Without Dimmesdale, Chillingworth's only remaining connection to the world is the very child who catalyzed the tragedy. So the outcast child inherits vast wealth, moves to Europe, and according to the sources, lives a vibrant, fulfilling life entirely free of Puritan constraints.
But Hester's ultimate decision is what truly anchors the legacy of this story.
Right, because she leaves too, initially.
She leaves Boston, but years later, she makes a profound choice. She returns to her small, isolated cabin on the edge of the woods. She has resources. She could remain in Europe or go anywhere in the world.
But she doesn't.
No, she chooses to come back to the site of her suffering. And most remarkably, she voluntarily resumes wearing the scarlet letter.
The magistrates aren't forcing her anymore. The people who sentenced her are mostly gone. She puts it on herself.
She does. But the cultural meaning of the symbol has been entirely rewritten. Over the years, through her quiet strength, her resilience, and her endless support for the poor and marginalized women of the community, the townspeople's perception shifts.
They stop seeing the sin.
The letter no longer stands for adultery. They begin to say it means Abel. Some even view it with the reverence of a religious relic, murmuring that it means angel.
She flips the script completely. The exact tool the society engineered to destroy her identity becomes the undeniable proof of her strength.
Exactly.
She didn't defeat the community by fighting them. She defeated them by owning her narrative so thoroughly that the society was forced to change their definition to match her reality.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Hawthorne's novel is a masterful, enduring critique of ideological purity. By exploring the sins of his own Puritan ancestors, he demonstrates that a society demanding absolute conformity doesn't create utopia.
Not even close.
It creates terrified hypocrites who fester in the shadows, and it breeds monsters who weaponize punishment. True morality and psychological health require the courage to integrate our flaws into our public lives.
And that brings us full circle to the very beginning of this deep dive, the narrator finding that physical, burning cloth letter in the custom house. When Hester finally passes away, she is buried in the same cemetery as Dimmesdale.
Side by side.
They share a single tombstone, and the sources give us the exact heraldic inscription carved into the rock. It reads, "On a field, sable, the letter A, jewels."
That is the language of heraldry, the system used for royal coats of arms. Sable means black, and gules means red. So the tombstone officially displays on a black background. The scarlet letter burns. It elevates her badge of shame to a permanent noble crest.
Hundreds of years later, long after those rigid Puritans and their terrifying, suffocating laws have turned to literal dust, that symbol is the only thing that survives.
It really is a testament to her power.
It outlasts the heavy iron door of the prison. It outlasts the self-righteous magistrates. So as we wrap up this deep dive, take a moment to think about the societal labels, the online judgments, or the modern expectations of conformity that we are so intensely terrified of today.
The flaws we exhaust ourselves trying to hide.
Will those strict, arbitrary rules even exist in 100 years? Or will only the symbols of our personal authenticity and resilience survive to tell our actual story? Something to mull over. Until next time.